Humans have collectively pondered the origins of our existence for centuries, perhaps even so far back as our very first day of life as a species. The reason for this quest isn't entirely clear, but the general consensus seems to be the notion that if we could just somehow figure out this one thing, if we could just understand how exactly we came to be, then we would obtain some kind of precious knowledge that would what? Solve all of our problems? End world hunger? Usher in a new era of everlasting world peace? I beg to differ, for the prominent theologians Eric B. and Rakim once said,
"It ain't where you're from, it's where you're at."
Think of an orphaned child, perpetually haunted by the reasons they were abandoned. They've lived decades and created a respectable life for themselves without this knowledge. But one day, overcome by the desire to know, they seek out and find their story. Maybe it's disappointing. Their parents were hopelessly addicted to drugs and left them in a garbage can. Or maybe their parents were sober and wealthy, but only wanted a boy to carry the family name, and they, being a girl, were discarded without a second thought. Or maybe their parents were humble, wonderful people who died tragically and unfairly in a horrific car accident when the person was just an infant. The knowledge might satisfy their desire, but would ultimately change nothing about who they are, who they've made themselves to be. If asked later by a friend how they feel now that they know who their parents were and why they were orphaned, they might say it really doesn't change anything, that they know who they are, or that is to say, who they want to be. For each of us is in control of our own personal destiny. I feel this same concept applies to our origins as human beings. The knowledge of how we came to exist in this place can only really be one of three things: satisfying, disappointing, or unremarkable. In any case, I don't believe it would significantly affect our entire species to the extent that it would mark the beginning of a worldwide paradigm shift in our conscience. If it were satisfying to finally have it solved, and the explanation was one that somehow gave each of us pause as we considered the truth of it, that moment would likely be brief in its serenity before the momentum of the world took over and life moved on, ultimately changing nothing. If it were disappointing, it could potentially leave people despondent, more hopeless than ever, creating a new multitude of nihilists hell-bent on personal and global destruction, for the knowledge ultimately proved to them that this is all for nothing. If it were unremarkable, it would leave a melancholic cloud of indifference hanging over humanity's future, and it would be akin to disappointment. It's highly likely that none of our current problems would be solved. In fact, we may realize that we've spent an extremely unreasonable amount of time, money, and effort on a fruitless pursuit. To put it in the simple words of The Rock, "It doesn't matter!" If humans put the same amount of effort into solving the problems of this moment as we have into searching the planet and the cosmos for the answer to the question of how we got here, we would undoubtedly be in a much better position. The theory is that if we could just understand the past, it would help us understand the future. While true to an extent, one must draw the line at how much time is too much time looking back. If a driver stared in the rearview mirror while operating a vehicle, they would undoubtedly crash at some point. While we steer the vehicle of our fate forward, we must glance back only briefly when necessary, primarily keeping our eyes on the road ahead. The past does not inform the future. The past only describes how we got to the present. The present, and what we do with it, determines how we get to the future. If a person, standing at the precipice of a great canyon with only a precariously strung rope bridge stretched out before them, repeatedly asked, "How did I get here?" they would not move even 1 inch forward across that gap. Only by asking themselves, as they look toward the other side, "How do I get there?" are they starting the journey forward. There is no moment more important than now.